Hello everybody, welcome to this moment. Welcome to the Christel Crawford Show. I'm Christel. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're watching live. I'm so glad you're listening later. And today is called Going Beyond Tolerance. Yes, and so there we are. So this topic, this conversation got created actually out of the last 14-day series that I did called Having Your Reality. And somebody asked me to start talking about the difference between tolerance and allowance. And so that's sort of where this got created. Hi Sandra, hi Jen, and welcome from Cancun. I am in Cancun right now. We're in a beautiful little Airbnb. So I wanted to show you the outside, but honestly it's loud and there's a lot of cars, and anyway, this is better, trust me. How you want it. But welcome from beautiful Mexico. Okay, so this conversation originally got created out of a conversation about allowance versus tolerance. And so that's really where I started researching it. And then I realized it was a much deeper exploration, because what this conversation leads us into is what is allowance and how do you practice it in your life? And then what does it take to get access to the choices you have when you are just tolerating fill in the blank, okay? So this is gonna be an ADD romp like always through this topic, and you're gonna be invited to another 14-day series that's actually linked above my head. Hi Olga. And I invite you guys to ask me your questions while you're here so that I can include them as a part of this conversation. But let's get started. So, hello. From the reference materials, okay? Tolerance is putting up with. That's the definition of tolerance, okay? You're putting up with whatever. Allowance is interesting point of view without judgment, okay? Tolerance is resistance and reaction to a situation or a person. Now, I told you where the conversation about tolerance versus allowance got started. What I haven't said yet is that last week, my mother, who is included in our Christel Crawford shows quite often, actually last week was rushed to the hospital with a perforated colon and a very severe case of diverticulitis. And so that, of course, stirred up the troops, right? There's 5 of us. I'm the oldest. My mom called my sister called us. And then, you know, all last week we were in different conversations with each other about, you know, care for my mom and what's next and how do we do this. And in the process of all of that, I received from one of my mom's neighbors about 20 different photographs of the inside of my mom's house. And it is, she lives a hoarding, squalor situation. Like her house is covered in pests and rodents and clutter, like extreme amounts of clutter. It's not clean. She's almost burned the place down. Like it's just, it's something you would see on TV. And that's my mother, you know. So I received those photos. And then on top of all of it, she was trying to be nice. And in trying to be nice, wanted me to drop everything to come down and take care of her, but did it in a way that was really forceful and abusive, and thought she basically could abuse me into taking care of her. Now, I tell you all that to tell you that my mom's choices and the way that she lives her life has been a source of much tolerance in my world. And tolerance is basically a coping. It's you're tolerating, you're coping. You're not being, you're not choosing, you're not out creating, you're not doing any of those things. You're just putting up with a shitty situation, right? And I've done a lot of tolerating over the years of the way other people treat me, of the other people's choices, instead of true allowance, which is just interesting point of view. I have this point of view. So last week really came to a head for me. I had a nice, massive meltdown after my mom started doing her thing about basically trying to abuse me to take care of her, which was crazy because I was ready to anyway. And so that's a whole other video. So I had this meltdown, and I started really looking at, like, I don't melt down a lot anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have a lot of allowance and a lot of space and a lot of power and a lot of, like, for most every moment in my life, I am me. This occurred last week, and you know, took us all off guard, and I discovered this huge area where I'm still just tolerating abuse. I'm tolerating my own choice to not be. So I really went after it. And here's what I'm discovering. I'm going to read you a little bit of information from the reference materials, and I'm going to tell you what I'm playing with here. There are a lot of things that come with awareness that are not necessarily comfortable. This is Gary Douglas talking. You get to know things that you don't like to know. So like, there's a lot I discovered or deepened in my awareness around my mom last week that I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know that. You have to get, though, he says, that there has to be no form, no structure, and no significance. That means that everything is really truly just an interesting point of view. Nothing is important. Nothing is significant. Now here's what I realized occurred for me, is that when I got those photos of her house, her living situation and the choices she's making as a person became significant to me. Like when you're removed from a situation, when you're far away from family, when you are divorced from that person and you're no longer really around a person's choices or anything, then it doesn't, you know, it's not in your face. But what you discover your true point of view is when it gets up into your face again. That's when where you're really functioning from in regards to them shows up, right? So, but in reality, nothing is important and nothing is significant. And that's what allowance is about. So I recognize that this is one area in which I don't have allowance at all. And Gary goes, that's the place we would like you to get, where you are not resisting and reacting, nor are you aligning and agreeing. So I don't have to resist and react to her choices, and I don't have to align and agree with them. But in allowance of everything. Allowance, though, is not a doormat. So this is where, you know, when she started trying to force me into taking care of her in the way she wanted, allowance can be, do that again and I'll punch your lights out. Allowance is not tolerance, it's allowance. And in that particular example, allowance for you is, this doesn't work for me anymore, and if you do that again, I'll kill you, basically. So as I was going through this last week, and then I want to extrapolate this out into tolerance for your situation you've created with money, tolerance for what's going on in the world, tolerance for whatever. What I discovered about myself is that as soon as she started doing her thing, which is the thing that I've just tolerated all these years in various ways, I've made so much progress, so much has changed, but there's this particular thing she does that I just have tolerated, and the way I've coped with it is leaving the situation. So she started doing that abusive, forceful thing, and I did something similar. It's like I left the situation, but I went on to another telecall, and I was, you know, asking for some like help, clarity, or with another facilitator. And she said, I said, what I became aware of, what I had in that moment was this intensity of awareness. And when you get an intensity of awareness, it's a download of so many different things, right? It's like a download of her world, the world, judgment, projections, expectations, but it's like this instant, like a tsunami of awareness, okay? And when you get a tsunami of awareness, like when somebody's pushing a lot of energy in your direction, which is one of the ways my mom uses to get power over people. People who do abuse and force are doing power over you, okay? So that's one of her tactics, is when she can't draw you in with her victim thing, she does power over. So they're pushing a lot of energy in your direction. So what I have chosen to do is tolerate that and leave. But when I talked to another facilitator about this, I said, you know, there was just this intensity of awareness, and then I go into this, I don't know what to do. I go into a beyond, I just back off, I leave. And she's like, well, that intensity of awareness is the intensity of you. Now that is still unraveling for me. That's it. So I took that information, that's the intensity of me. So what I recognized in that moment, and this ties into the allowance piece, is that when she does that and I back off, what I haven't been willing yet to be is the intensity of me. I back away from not her, but I back away from being me, which in that situation would be something greater than what I've chosen so far. I don't know how that would show up. And it's that thing of allowance for yourself going, yeah, you do that again and I'll just don't ever fucking do that again, you know? I haven't said that here. Now I've done that a lot of other places, you know, so that's the thing about these conversations is that, you know, you will have grown in this over time, right? You guys are probably choosing more of this kind of thing more and more, but you're going to find these pockets where like still deeply down in there, you're still just surviving something. So that intensity of being. Now I want to take what sounds like a really weird rabbit trail over into, so then this week we traveled to Mexico. Mexico is so many things. We're in Cancun, so one part of Mexico. But one of the things that I recognized when we came down here, because I had just come out of this, like, I've been in this sort of, I don't even know what you would call it, sort of crushed between two pressures, you know, I've been this diamond getting crushed between two pieces of earth last week. And so we flew into Cancun and we were walking on the beach yesterday alongside of the ocean. And one of the things that always just amazes me about being in nature is that there is this intensity of space. Now the ocean, take something like the ocean, right? The ocean is intense, and it's not gentle. But it's weird because when you're walking next to the ocean, you feel relaxed. It's like that intensity of being relaxes you. And that was the thing that really struck me yesterday. I was like, it's so interesting because it's not like it's more calm out here. Like when you're walking next to the ocean, it's not necessarily calm. It's raucous, it's loud, it roars, it's always moving, it's moving things around. You had dead fish, couple dead fish float up and there's stuff going on, there's activity in the water. It's not calm, but there's a peace, there's an intensity of being in space there. And that something clicked for me. I was like, I have not been willing to be the intensity of space and being and presence with her. The moment she does that power over, I let go of that in favor of reacting. I go into tolerating. And that right there, that moment, that choice that I have available that I'm still discovering is changing so many things for me, because I can see how in my business or with money or in my relationship, how I'm doing tolerating instead of being more. You know, and I've heard Dane talk about this. Dane here talks about this as like being the 500-pound gorilla in the room. So everybody's talking about this in a different way, but that, right, the way that was talked about last week hit me like that. So that right there would be allowance for me. In that situation would be to turn up the space and turn up the being and have allowance for me and whatever the fuck comes out of my mouth instead of doing anything outside of that. You don't ever get to say that to me again. You don't ever get to treat me like this again. If you want to continue talking to me, that never comes out of your mouth. I mean, there's so many things I could have said, right? Like, then you can, it's always after the fact that I go into, oh, I could have said that. That would have been great. But what space, here's a clearing, are you absolutely, eternally, irrevocably, infinitely, and utterly refusing? That you really could be choosing, that if you would choose it, would change all realities and non-realities and manifest as the extrapolation of you into life. And everything that brings up times a godzillion when you destroy and uncreate it all. Right, wrong, good, bad, pop, pop, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Let me read it again. And if you need information on the clearing statement, go to theclearingstatement.com, okay? What space, what intensity of space are you absolutely, eternally, irrevocably, infinitely, and utterly refusing that you really could be choosing? That if you would choose it, would change all realities and manifest as the extrapolation of you into life. And everything that is times a godzillion when you destroy and uncreate it all. Right, wrong, good, bad, pop, buckle, name, shorts, boys and beyonds. So here's the thing. I'm going to read this to you. When you are willing to know everything that is in somebody else's universe totally and see what they require of you, and know exactly what you are willing to give, what you are not willing to give, and be willing to deliver any part of it that you choose, and never expect anything in return, then you will almost be giving up this reality. That's stepping out of this reality and living by total choice and awareness. And this right here, guys, is the conversation we're going to get into over the next 14 days. We're going to start on Friday, so you're invited. And if you're hearing this in the future, check my shop because it's most likely there. But what's space? And that's just the thing I'm looking at. It's like knowing everything. For example, let's take my mom. Great example. You all have a mom, right? Or a sister or whoever. Knowing everything that's in her world. Everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? Totally. And seeing what she requires of me. My mom requires of me to do things in a particular way. I see that. Okay. And then know also, simultaneous to what's in her world, what I'm willing to give and what I'm not willing to give. And be willing to deliver any part of it that I choose in any moment, and it can change whatever. And never expect anything in return. Then you will almost be giving up this reality. And I've had a big demand of that, of like, I'm not living from this reality anymore. I'm living from the reality. The reality is all choice, all awareness, possibility, question, you know? So what space are you absolutely, eternally, irrevocably, infinitely, and utterly refusing that you really could be choosing, that if you would choose it, would change all realities and manifest as the extrapolation of you into life? And everything that is times a godzillion, where you destroy it and create it all. Right, wrong, good, bad, pop, pop, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Here's a little bit of information on that. Here's Gary talking. One of the things I see people in Access doing is assuming that in order to create their own life, like to have the choices that you really have, that you have to reject this reality. In oneness, everything's included. My mom's included. The way she is included. Force is included. Power over is included. It's all included, okay? And nothing's judged. Where do you get that means excluding this reality? So if I was going to exclude this reality, I would have to exclude all the things that I do half the time. You have to have awareness of this reality. And awareness of this reality is judgment, decisions, computations, conclusions, judgment, power over, force. That's all this reality. You have to have awareness of this. You have to receive what this reality is, but you don't have to live by this reality. So, you know, if we keep using this mom example, right, she was being fucking intense with this reality, projecting it, like using a fuck ton of energy, right? If I don't make that real, it doesn't matter how much energy she uses. It's not real. The moment I resist it, I've made it, well, before I resist it, the resistance comes from making it real, right? The moment I resist it, I've made it real, and now it's stuck in place, and now she doesn't have another choice, and I don't have another choice, and I'm just tolerating what's there. But she could be gale winding, like she could be hurricaning at me, using all the energy in the world, and I don't have to live by that. Those are the choices I have available, and that's what I'm like looking for. That's what I'm having right now. That's what I'm pulling into my world, is like, what are the choices I have here when this occurs? Because this, being, you know, the way my mom has been a place for me for my whole life where I've given me up over and over. I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, what's my reality with this? What's the reality here? So I don't have to, so you can receive what this reality is. I can recognize what she's doing, but I don't have to live by it. It's the same of what's going on in the world right now. You can recognize what's going on, but you don't have to live by it. You can recognize that there's a lot of fear going on. There's a lot of control. There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of shit going on right now. But you don't have to live by it. You can live your life from a totally different point of view. The only way you're going to get there is by realizing that you are space. This is huge. And you are that big. Now, what occurred when this scenario with my mom? She did her thing, and I went into being this big and left. And then went and talked to my friend and had a good cry and did bars for a full day, right? But in that moment, I was like, instead of going bigger, right? Being the 500, 800-pound gorilla. So when you recognize how big you really are, is the body inside of you, or are you inside the body? And once you recognize that the body's inside of you, you cannot see this as a limitation in life because you recognize how big you really are. So, gosh, guys, there's so many tools, and that's why I'm going to do 14 days of this conversation with your questions and everything, because, I mean, I want to explore being space, being energy, being the power that you are. I want to explore giving up this reality and not making it real anymore. You know, but I guess what I'd give you in this conversation, let's see. You gotta, what I've had to recognize is tolerating somebody is not me living. When I'm tolerating, I'm not living. When I'm just putting up with, I'm not creating. I'm not engaging as the creative source of anything. I'm just surviving. Like it's like walking out into a hurricane and I'm just trying to survive the hurricane, right? Instead of out creating the hurricane, being more space and not letting it affect me. So I want you to just look at, is there anywhere in my life that I'm just tolerating? And you could be tolerating stuff that you've created, right? Most of us are tolerating what we've created, right? So if you look at your financial situation, like, are you tolerating what's there? Or are you actively creating what really works for you? When you look at your family situation, are you tolerating? Where are you doing tolerance in the relationships there? You know, just tolerating this about your kid or this about your mom, instead of going, okay, cool, I don't have to tolerate anything. I get to be the 800-pound gorilla. Am I willing to be as intense as I am? Am I willing to outcreate this in whatever way that's fun for me? Because that's you starting to be that intensity that you're aware of, that you shy away from being, that you could choose to be. And so what's that going to be like? Well, it's going to be out of control is what it's going to be like. And that's tool number 3 is like, what would it take to be willing to be out of control, out of linearity, out of form, structure, and significance, out of concentricity, out of, you know, definition? What's that going to take? That clearing, by the way, should be done 30 times a day for 30 days if you've never done that. What energy, space, consciousness, and choice can me and my body be to be out of control, out of definition, out of linearity, out of form, structure, and significance, out of, I'm sure I'm missing one, for all eternity, and everything that doesn't allow it, times a godzillion, right, wrong, good, bad, pop, pop, all name, short, split demands. But you know what I realized with that is that I do tolerating so that I don't get out of control. It's a control mechanism for me. Because I don't know what the fuck is going to come out of my mouth. If I really choose to be me in that moment, I can't predict what I'm going to say or do. So instead of being unpredictable and having allowance for that unpredictability, I control me and I do tolerating, which kills me and doesn't give that other concentricities, thank you, doesn't give that other person any choice either. So how much are you guys doing that? How much are you controlling you by being broke? How much are you controlling you by tolerating your mom? How much are you controlling you by tolerating the dynamic in your relationship? How much are you tolerating your kids instead of enjoying them, fucking with them, creating with them, you know? How much are you tolerating what you've created with and as your body? How much, like, God, you could just take this into every area. How much are you tolerating what you've created as your business? What if you could scrap everything you've created your business as and just go, well, fuck it. This is, what else can I create here? What can I generate now? Same with, you know, what what do I want to choose in my relationship? What do I want to generate as? And the whole, it's so interesting because this tolerating thing it ties into you being the source. What do you want to be the source of? It ties into exploring what it means to be space, the aggressive presence of space, the intensity of space. It explores the intensity of being. It explores giving up this reality in favor of your reality, the reality. So there's a lot here. But the big thing, it's like, if you were willing to risk having total allowance for you, what could you choose? If you never tolerated anything again, it's like, this doesn't work for me anymore. We're making a different choice here. And that's all it takes. This doesn't work for me anymore. We're making a different choice. Not choice for like, should I stay or should I go? But it's like, well, this just, yeah, not this. And you know what this reminds me of in this particular moment is, I heard Gary say in an abuse class, he did a 3-day abuse class, which was just phenomenal. He's like, every single one of you that suffered abuse, when you were done being abused, stopped it. Every single one of you. And I could look back in my life and that was absolutely true. The moment I was done being abused, it stopped. And that's true even when I was abusing myself. The moment I was done abusing myself with money, it stopped. Because I stopped. I started creating. The moment I was done abusing myself in different relationship scenarios, they were done. You know, the moment I was done with what my dad was doing when I was 12, I told him to stop. Like, it stopped. It's every single time. So it's like tolerating is just the temporary, what we've decided is a temporary fix to putting a stop to or creating a change that we actually have the power and potency to create. We've just backed off. We've used doubt or fear as more real than our ability to choose. So what intensity of being are you refusing that you truly could be choosing, that if you would choose it would give you you? And everything that is, times a godzillion, will you destroy it and create it all? Right, wrong, good, bad, pop, all name, shorts, boys, and beyonds. So I don't even know how to tie this up in a neat little bow. It's a huge conversation. I guess I would just ask you to look at, you know, is there anywhere in your life that you're doing tolerating? And what could you choose there that's different? What could you choose to be? What intensity could you choose to be that you are, that you've been refusing? And if you weren't refusing the intensity of you and everything that you are is included, what would you be capable of? You know, if you were being the full-on intensity of you with money, would you ever have a problem again? If you were being the full-on intensity of you in your relationship, would it change? If you were being the full-on intensity of you in, you know, with your kids, and I'm not talking about yelling at them, I'm talking about being intense space, intense being, intense presence, total potency, would it be different? Would it be more fun? Would you be more alive? Would your body come alive? And yeah, what else is possible that we haven't considered? So tag a friend that you think would get something out of this. Share this with them, please. And if you'd like more, you have a link above that you can use to come play. And we will spend 14 days deep diving into what is promising to be a very, very dynamic conversation. Cool. Have fun. See you next week.